One of the things that separates amateur songwriters and composers from professionals is the way that energy flows in a piece of music. It's an important skill to have, and fortunately, it's really easy to practice. So here's 10 ways that you can increase energy in your music. First item on our list is the rise. Simply having a pitch or a tone that rises up, an instrument that gets louder, or an increasing tempo or subdivision, or playing a melody up an octave is a foolproof method to increase energy. You can do any of these in isolation or mix and match until your heart's content. This is probably most obvious and famous in electronic music, but just because it's most famous there does not mean that it can't be used in other genres. And in fact, most other genres use some form or another of this. For example, any reverse effect like a cymbal, reverb, or a drum hit are commonly used in loads of genres. All of these are a combination of a rising tone and a volume increase. So let's listen to an example of the rise. Number 2 on our list is tension. Music is largely a game of tension and release. In fact, arguably this whole video is just about taking music in an existing energy state and then adding some tension to that to increase its perceived energy. Without tension, it's like reading a story where nothing happens. There's no stakes in the game. There's nothing giving you a reason to invest in the outcome. If I play these two notes together, it sounds horrible. This is tension. When I go from those two horrible notes to these two, the tension is resolved and everything in the world feels right again. All you need to do is find some notes that grind together and then move them to a place where they stop grinding. I would recommend using your ear to experiment with this, but if you've got any music theory knowledge, practice it here. Tension is most often associated with pitch, but it can be affected by any element in your song. Number 3 is the fill. Drum or instrument fills are a super common tool for increasing energy. In point 1, we discussed rising pitches and increasing subdivisions. A fill is basically a combination of these. Quite often, a drum fill will mean that there's faster subdivisions, and an instrumental run will most likely have fast subdivisions and it's likely to go up in pitch. If you're choosing to use slower subdivisions in your fill or go down in pitch, you will likely decrease the perceived energy. You can still use these slower subdivisions or falling pitches to increase energy, but you're making your job more difficult than it needs to be. However, if you insist on trying this and it feels like it's not working, opt for faster subdivisions or a rising pitch. Once you've got something that works, you can try to change that into slower subdivisions or a falling pitch, and then it becomes easier to compare which you like more. Here's an example. Number 4 is silence. This one seems counterintuitive, but let's listen to Blackout by Versus Me for a second. Crank it. Is that not the most intense bit of silence you've ever heard? Silence can be used nearly anywhere, and the use of silence in your compositions is a powerful compositional tool. Get familiar with it. Sometimes silence will destroy a vibe, but often it will rock your world. The reason why silence works so well is because it invites your listeners to invest in the song. We're so used to an overstimulated existence. If all of a sudden we have some emptiness we need to deal with, our brains try to fill that in. This increases anticipation. In saying that, if we make someone wait too long, the tension will totally dissolve. Number 5, extension. Often, simply holding onto a note or a chord or whatever without any change increases energy. This is especially true if you've heard it once or twice, and then the final time you break the pattern by extending the idea. Most often this works because of an increase in tension from point number 2 and an increase of anticipation. Usually, ideas that lead from one section to another will have some inherent tension that needs to be resolved. Holding on to that tension for longer than anticipated means that we yearn for the resolution more intensely than earlier in the song. In this example, I just hold onto the chord for a bit longer and it really wants to pull to the next section. Number 6 on our list is instrumentation. Another common one is to add in or subtract layers. We've all heard it a million times where a second verse is nearly exactly the same, except this time it has a little melodic line in the background, or some instruments are missing, or a vocal harmony is introduced, or some other change like this. There are a million examples of this happening because it's so effective and so simple, and really easy to do. This one is only limited by your creativity, but the safest options would be the ones I've listed above. Also, don't be afraid of taking a section down to a bare bones version. Often, if you decrease a song to the bare minimum, it becomes really easy to bring it back up to a big climax because the energy levels are so different. Here is the previous idea, but with a new melodic line over the top. Number 7 is to change tones. Similar to the previous one, changing the tone can have a huge effect on the perceived energy levels. It can be as simple as playing your instrument harder, or vocals being used more forcefully, or anything like this. Here is a song called Glamorous, where nothing really changes except that the distortion guitars are kicked on and the singing gets a little more invested. Number 8 is to change time signatures. This one can be loads of fun. Typically you want to make things shorter if you're wanting to increase energy. So let's say you're in 4/4. If you move to 3/4, you need to get the same information out in a smaller amount of time. It's going to have the effect of speeding things up. Whereas if you move to 5/4, you'd have more time to get the same information, therefore slowing down the pace. In saying that, if you move to 5/4, you can use that extra time to inject something exciting into the bar. This obviously increases energy. However, here is an example of going from 4/4 to 3/4. Number 9 is the key change. Quite possibly the most famous key change is the step up key change. To be fair, this has been absolutely done to death, so no wonder it's fallen out of favor. One of my least favorite songs ever is called Love on Top by Beyonce. If you can bear to listen to that song, you'll know what I mean. Each time the key changes, the perceived energy level increases. However, this semitonal change makes very rare appearances in metal. Metal more often uses key changes where they'll run a riff in its initial state and then move it up a few frets or to another string without changing anything about the pattern. It's a great way to get more bang for your buck and time out of your song. In saying that, you can change key to any key you want. Just keep in mind that in general, if the pitch goes up, so does the energy. And the final one on our list today is note length. Simply making notes longer or shorter can have a huge effect on the energy of the song. Not much more to be said with this, so let's just jump straight to the example. I mentioned at the start of the video that practicing building energy is really easy. This is because pretty much any transition within your song could utilize one or more of these ideas. If you have a typical song structure of verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, it means you have 5 different places that you can experiment with energy transitions. And to me, experimentation is one of the most powerful tools you have as a songwriter. The more you can experiment, the more experience you'll have connecting weird and wonderful ideas. That will mean that over time, it becomes easy to come up with creative ways to write music and play with the energy levels. And a final note here is that playing with energy in a song can be viewed in many different ways. For example, if you increase tension, you increase energy. If you increase anticipation, you increase energy. If you increase momentum, you increase energy. Everything we've discussed today fits into one or more of those categories. And the wonderful part about this is if you ever want to decrease energy, you can use the ideas in this video in reverse. If you decrease tension, you decrease energy. If you decrease anticipation, you decrease energy. If you decrease momentum, you decrease energy. So there's 10 ways to increase energy in your music. Please let me know if there's any challenges you're struggling with in writing your own music, and I'll make a video about it. Catch you next time.